Welcome everyone to the new episode of Awaken the Goddess. In this podcast series, I have guests, but it's the exact opposite. Instead of me asking the guests questions, usually they ask me the questions. And today I have Luke. Welcome, Luke.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to London.
Nice to be here. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
So it's...
And you have your roots here, so it's...
This is my home. This is my home.
Special. Lovely. Maybe you'll come back here.
We will see.
Yeah, we will see. Okay.
Yeah, we will see.
Okay, so ask me anything. Let's start.
Very nice to be here with you and to be in London with you. I would love for you to introduce yourself to me and tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do and what brings us.
Should I start from my childhood or my general journey?
What feels right to you in this point?
Who I am. So the answer to who I am, I'll first start with what people view of me and who I am in the world's eye, which is how my mission and my vision in this lifetime is reflected onto the world, is a teacher in my purest reality, in my deepest truth. I was born as a teacher, and I was born as a spiritual teacher with a thing I would call many years ago, with a gift people have been calling for over the 25 years. But I didn't know it was a gift, but I was born with something, like some kind of a universal connection, universal wisdom of just knowing what the truth was and not having the distorted perceptions people have. And I didn't know what to do about it in my early childhood. And I'm not going to go into depth about, how I was born. But in general, I was born in a very painful and dark period of my family. So I was kind of like the light that shined upon them. So that was how they viewed me and how they experienced me, because it was the darkest of the darkest time of our lives, of their lives. And I was born into this darkness, and I even remember in the outside world, even when I was 2 years old, 3 years old, this chaos or this darkness or this stressed level of energy. I was born in Turkey, in Izmir, and I experienced the 80s, which was a big revolution happened in Turkey, and the armed forces took the control of Turkey and everything shut down. So it was like a big transformation economically. Everything crashed, and it was very difficult times when I was a child. So I remember this darkness outside of me, or this chaotic world outside of me. And I remember no matter what was happening on the outside, because I remember my mom was stressed and my dad stressed and people were sick and stressed. So I remember this kind of like this energy of kind of like darkness. And I remember no matter what happened on the outside, I was somehow able to just stay safe in my own being. And that's kind of like where I still am. And that's kind of like why people basically come to my seminars and workshops and retreats, to experience that energy, because that energy is so subtle, that connection with truth, what is.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
So I wanted you to talk, because you mentioned truth. What is truth?
It is this deep, deep, subtle silence and peace and just pure love. That's it, like silence and nothing else. I would call it subtle silence, which is not the emptiness of sound, but which is the highest vibration of love.
Does it have to be subtle?
It is subtle. It's like this. It is very grounded, and it's like no movement, this kind of like a still lake without a movement. And no matter what's happening on the sea or outside, it's just this unmoving, subtle energy. It doesn't move, it's there, it doesn't change, it doesn't transform, nothing happens to it. It's and that's that kind of like sits in the core of my being, and it's really safe. It's like how I would actually express, or just if I wanted to find the right words of what my students and what the people are experiencing with me energetically, is this deep level of knowing it is okay and it is safe, no matter what happens on the outside. When you look at life and how I've been, and I don't want to even call it I, because it's kind of like this I am present. So when I say I don't mean Nevşah, which people see on the outside, the physical body and the brain and everything. When I say I mean the I am present, which is the ultimate, the universal being energy. We can all connect to, and we are all connected with. So this deep level of I am presence, I think I've been connected forever, and I don't experience losing that connection, is what people are experiencing. And no matter what happens on the outside, and life is kind of like this, what we call life, the journey on earth, is just a couple of years of experience, and that's not the real experience. So it's like in my journey, in this lifetime, or in my journey with myself, with that connection with my being, I don't remember a time I took life seriously. And I think that's like, it was a big problem for me many years ago, especially when I was a teenager. It was a big problem. It was kind of like this whole big issue, because I was judging that. I didn't know it was a gift. I was judging it because it was so different from other people in the outside world. And because I was judging that, people were judging me. So I remember it was a big issue for my mom, for my dad, for my friends, but I just couldn't help it. I just couldn't take things as serious as other people did. And I could not move beyond the truth that kept on telling me, this is not real. So it's like, this is not real, this is not real, this is not, it's like, I just couldn't move past that truth, which was so loud in my being. It's like every second of my life, I knew that this will end. So it's this woke mindset, knowing this will end. So it's like, why just, why bother, thinking about the little details, and, just too much being in the, be attached or whatever. So, so attachment is a word, and yeah, so it's like all my childhood and all my teenage years, and I just couldn't attach, which was a big issue, because I was judging that, I was questioning that, and beside attachment, I wasn't able to make things mean things. I would just see them as they are, which I can now say like simple, just it is. And I, like other people, were making meanings out of things, like he did this, it means this, she did that, it means that. I did not have that ability.
You didn't make the
connection. And I was feeling so strange and horrible inside, because I thought I didn't belong.
Which is interesting, because there must have been an identity to this feeling of not belonging, and that was where this confusion for you might have been rooted. If you're somewhere, because you are mostly disconnected from the world, but then there is something that is still the part of you that you have to transcend.
Yeah.
Is the part of you that has attachment to the not belonging.
Yeah,
which is
you know
the
how
early
I
journey.
experienced it? I think it's like how I can explain is it's kind of like the connection with myself, that I am presence on the inside, and my disconnection with the world outside was huge. So my experience when I came into this world as a child, as a teenage, was kind of like I had walls around me. But inside those walls, like a castle, that castle energy, like inside those walls, I was safe and peaceful, everything was okay, and I loved it. But when I opened my eyes and looked at the world, I could not see the reality shining in the world because I had walls. And those were, if you ask me today, my genetic codes, and like genetically what I had, what I brought here to transform. And I literally had loads and loads, this thick wall, loads and loads of
Let's
like
speak.
years and years and 100 years of maybe human experience on top of me that needed transformation, and I had to transform. And I didn't know how to do it, of course, in my early years. So I started experiencing life like that, but it was like my experience was there was this amazing inner light and deep connection with truth, but it wasn't being reflected to the world. This deep, deep meaning in my being, but it wasn't reflected to the world. So my world, because that light and meaning wasn't reflected, was a meaningless, empty void. So my void wasn't in me, it was out of me. It was in the world, like the world was a void. It was like
there was no meaning to live in the world.
Yeah, it was like meaningless and empty, and I couldn't make
solace within the self. You were able to give surrender to your core. Your core was very alive, light.
Yes, and I think one thing I realize now, after all these years of self-mastery and working on myself, in that journey. So people have two choices. Like, I think there are two different levels of being on earth. Like, there are some people who lose their deep connection with truth. And when you lose that connection with truth and with real meaning, what is, because your life lacks meaning, you start giving meaning to your life. So the people around me were giving meaning to their lives because they lost their connection, and they needed something meaningful in their life. So most of them, and right now when I look at the world, most people are like that, like the whole masses, they give meaning.
They lack that connection to their core.
Yes, because they are not connected with meaning.
And can I just...
Yes.
The core, just to give clarity, what is the core connected to? So why is that part why is there safety in the core that we can then, which your journey has been about transmuting that core and bridging it with the world? So
yes, I'll come to that. Okay. So the masses and the biggest population in the world, I think, disconnect from that truth, that core, which I'm gonna dive into in a bit. And because they are disconnected, they choose to give meaning themselves. So they start looking at the flower and they say, this is beautiful or this is ugly. They start looking at something, this is good, this is bad. And there is this whole giving meaning process which leads to even more disconnection with
distortion.
Truth.
Because it's rooted in a separation.
Yes.
Disconnection from source.
Yes.
It does not understand its relationship to the core.
Yeah. So in my story...
So I understand.
Yeah. So in my story, I wasn't able to disconnect from the truth. So I knew what meaning was, and the I am presence, I was the mean, and I was connected with the meaning. But when I opened my eyes, I couldn't have it reflected, and I didn't have the ability of disconnecting like other people and making things mean things, look at things in a distorted way. So I basically didn't know what to do with it. It's like I was, yeah, and over the years, I think I added on top of that wall. I think that wall even got thicker.
Wow, okay.
Because I did not feel safe to speak about the truth anymore. It was so
Oppressed.
beyond people's idealism and thinking and their making meaning systems. It was like kind of like this crash. Whenever I spoke about the truth, people would go almost mad. Like I remember my mom, my dad, what the fuck are you talking about? All this stuff.
Of course.
It was like too much.
Of course.
You know?
Of course.
And at one point I was like, you know, because I was very safe in my being, and it's kind of like this, like our being and that connection, which I still have and has deepened over the years. And now I'm able to shine that in the world and heal other people's journeys as well. So that, with that connection, because it's only soul, and there is no physical anything in the being, at one point I started thinking to myself, maybe I should just get over with, because I'm connected with the soul, the source. I know it's gonna go on forever. Why am I bothering with this lifetime?
Human experience. What's interesting in your story is that no one, because you had no point of reference to have an understanding of what you were related to, so the person who's experiencing the connection with spirit, let's say, well, your soul, the eternal parts of you, doesn't understand what that is because it doesn't have a language to relate it to. So, and it can't find a reflection in the world and nothing to give the person, the identity, a safe passage to connect that to the world. And then, which your teaching, your work has been about understanding that it's not that there was something fundamentally wrong with you, it's something fundamentally distorted in the world, and your gift is to cut through that.
And the reason being, because I think I had the, I mean, to cover up that much of a connection and light, you need the thickest wall. It's like my connection, it's like I said, my connection with truth. I don't remember any time still me being disconnected. It's just there.
Of course.
I don't know how that happened. We talked about it before. There are some esoteric explanations, but mainly I was born as the light to shine into my world. But it's like how I see it, the world wasn't ready, or I wasn't ready. But the story goes, to cover up that much of a connection, I had to build, I had and helped to even build thicker wall. So at one point, look, I was like suffocating from that wall. I either had to break through it,
but it's a disconnection.
Or connect through
but that wall is also, so different ways of looking at that wall. So this is also, you're born in the Middle East, and there is a natural oppression towards the feminine, and that probably is felt.
Truth, basically.
Yeah, true. Like so you're feeling the weight of the shadow. If there's darkness and light, the weight of the darkness pushing against you, and you are born to. You're meeting that without any tools. You're just
a lot of conditioning.
There's nothing. You're just feeling all of that weight, and you're like, how to not? Because what we learn through life is refinement. How do we bring our essence to the world and cut through, transmuting, to even know that you're here to transmute, turn those walls into your building blocks, your tools. The walls, but broken down, they become the building blocks that you can then build the castles and the cities and of the new future, right? We transmute our darkness, or the darkness of the world, and that's something that I understand that you do. You take the darkness and you turn it into your power, and that's what you've done from this time of not having any. This is what your guidance of self-mastery is, your own personal journey, and then what you then brought to the world or what you bring to the world through your process of learning how to transmute that darkness and give your authentic self total permission to shine in the world.
Yeah, and I think the reason why people have been experiencing amazing stuff in my retreats, and especially one-to-one experiences, like you probably heard me saying, like people came to my retreats who were unable to talk, started talking the second day. People came to my retreats with cancer, which got healed in the third day, and their doctors were amazed, what have you done? Or a lady came to a very young lady came with MS, and she wasn't able to walk. She came in with a wheelchair, and the doctors were saying she would probably have to start lying down because it's like her body wasn't functioning. Stood up in the third day, started walking, and she got better and better and better every day. And she's finished my coaching trainings. Now she's a coach and very well healthy. So it's like stuff happened, amazing stuff.
How is that even possible?
Yeah. So here I'm gonna come to. So I think, because I was like, first I was like, maybe it's because of the breath work, but then I checked with other teachers with the breath work and with the experience, stuff like these weren't happening. Although they were teaching similar stuff, like it was hardcore, and I didn't know how. And then I realized, because that wall I had was the thickest wall, and I had to break through it. And at one point in my life, I really came to this point, and I was truly thinking to myself, like, I either find a way to break open and break this wall, immediately. I needed it immediately, or I'm gonna just end my life. I don't want to continue like this. I was very clear. I just don't want to continue like this, because I know what light is, what love is, and I want to experience it in the world. I'm not gonna.
You want to see it reflected
and it's kind
back
of like
at you.
also.
You want to see it in the mirror of life, and you don't want to see the shadow being just having dominance.
And that's my mission in life. It's like, and that became a calling, and that became a mission. And when I say to my students, I do this work for personal reasons as well. That's why. So I broke open in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or in a breathwork session. It's like someone told me in a holotropic breathwork session, someone told me to breathe deeper, and then my breath got activated because I so much needed that opening. I was praying for it, and it was like so intense. I either wanted to break through or die. This is kind of like this crossing point of my life where this way or that way, it was that intense and that decisive. So at that session, I remember the breathwork session, probably the teachers that were leading the session were probably planned like an hour of session. I was there around 3 hours, 3.5 hours, just kept on breathing because my breath got activated. The only thing they told us was to breathe deeper. And it wasn't kind of like this intense, amazing session. People had amazing experience. It was just me having this amazing experience because my breath got activated. And I remember during this session, and my whole body I literally became a rock. Like my whole body was tense, and I kept on going because I know I was breaking through the wall. I kept on going, and at one point they were freaking out because they thought I was gonna die. My lips turned purple and my eyes were going backwards, and I remember connecting with all spiritual levels and all spiritual teachers. So when you told me, like in Kabbalah, there are 3 different names for 3 different levels of souls. In that, say it again.
Nefesh, Ruah, Neshama. Those are the 3 first levels.
So with that Nevşah energy, I think in that session, in a couple of hours, I connected with all levels of souls. And in the end, the way I ended the session was, I was certain I was in Jesus Christ energy. I was certain. I was certain, like I would feel the the whole tension and everything and all the pain. I was just breaking through in that hours of experience. And then the wall was gone. One session. Okay. And everything started shifting after that session. And everything. It's like, I remember the one experience that was very amazing was after that session the other day, and in that, it was a workshop. It was a Osho primal retreat. So it's kind of like this workshop where you go to your childhood and all that. We did lots of exercises, but breathing hit. And that's why I wanted to use breath work and became a breath work teacher and breathing scientist and got interested in breathing, so because I was like, whoa, opening.
That was
Before that, I was meditating, I was doing yoga, I was reading spiritual books. It was kind of like, okay, I know these already, so what? You know, it was like reading spiritual books or reading books of spiritual teaching.
You open, yes. So you were fearlessly willing to stand in your power and your truth and just show up in the world unapologetically.
Yeah, it was like, this energy.
Like, because most of us, feel the connection to the light. I'm very connected to it through my own practice, but a willingness to fully, unapologetically be completely, authentically one's fullest expression, that's something else.
Yeah, because it was a life and death matter.
Because it's like, I'm not going to hide anymore. Anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm standing fully in my power, and I am, this is my path. This is connected to source, and source to spirit, and to that, the eternal. So I'm just aligned with that truth, that's energy, and it has to go.
Yeah, the way I would interpret that is, my experience was like, this has to end.
Yeah.
Either way. It's either gonna end today.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna break through this wall.
A lot of people do psychedelics, where it's like ayahuasca.
And I was like, it's either gonna end, and I'm gonna break through this wall and just shine and make my life the expression of light and love, or I don't want to continue with this life, period. It was like that, I think made me.
But it's to die before you die, because there's an ego.
Yeah, I was ready to die.
It's just ego death in many respects.
Yeah,
it's like,
and I think in that session, it was kind of like a death and near-death experience, because they said I was breathing the whole time. I was like, but my whole, body was like a rock, and I remember feeling that wall, and I was in pain. I was in terrible pain. My body was in so much pain. I didn't care. I just didn't. I kept on going. Like, then I became a breath coach and a breath worker, and
how long ago?
And this is 2004.
Okay. 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago. It's even after I started teaching, because I started teaching yoga meditation 23 years ago. So my breakthrough was even after that. Even that didn't give me, because I needed something stronger. And so after that happened, and I felt something different, but I couldn't figure out what that was. But stuff started happening, like just the other day, just the day after. I had a good friend at the time, and she was a very connected lady, very spiritual, and she was doing Sufi work and shamanic work, and she used to connect with different teachers. She was a healer and Reiki teacher and all that, and a very powerful woman, business world as well. The day after, we were doing an active meditation, this Osho meditation, dancing meditation, and after the meditation, she told me, there is this Indian Rabbi at Mevlana, which is the kind of like a, not Mevlana, sorry, Meryemana, which is kind of like a sacred place people go to in Turkey, Izmir, very near to my parents' business place. She said, he sent me a message now, telepathically. He's waiting there to see you. And I just felt him throughout the whole meditation, and he asked me to connect with you and tell you he's waiting there for you. Okay, I said, and then I forgot about it. Mm-hmm. And after a while, it was, I think, a couple of months after that, I was at my parents' business. They have a printing house and a company and all that. And because I was also a partner in the business, I had to wait to sign some stuff, and I couldn't, I had to stay in their office for 4 to 5 hours to wait for the lawyers or wait for the signature, something about business. And I just realized, I had 4 hours, 5 hours of free time, and I could go to this place to meet that rabbi and, meet with him. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just told my parents, I'm going to go somewhere and come back. Took my mother's car. So it's kind of like this. Mariamana is the Virgin Mary's church in Izmir. Mm-hmm. So she used to live there and she used to stay there. So it's called the Virgin Mary Church, and people go there and pray, and the rabbi was there. So I told
rabbi in a church in Turkey.
Yes.
An Indian rabbi.
Not church.
Synagogue?
He was living on top of the church.
It's a lot of different...
In a house.
Different energies coming in.
Yeah. So I don't think he was religious I don't think he was religious. I think he was corely spiritual.
Okay.
So I didn't tell anyone. And I just went there and went into the church, prayed, went out, and there were bodyguards standing at the door. And the bodyguard turns to me and he says, he's waiting for you. And he shows me the way. There's a small gate, like a garden and gate, and there's a small little cottage at the top of the hill. So I opened the gate and went up the stairs, and I knock on the door, and there is this tiny, thin, old Indian guy, and he's probably 90 years old or something, like really old. And the moment he saw me and looked me in the eye, he starts crying, and he comes and starts kissing my hands. And he says stuff like, "You're here at last, you're here." And then at the time being, I was in a different mindset. Now I understand, truly understand what was happening there. But then it was so brand new, like how can I explain? Like in my inner truth, I knew what was possible what was possible, unlimited, But because it was the first time that light and truth was shining, I couldn't grasp on things like how those were happening and the way they were happening. It's the same thing with my retreats, and when I started doing workshops, I didn't know how this was all happening. It's like, because now I know, it's like this huge suppressed light was shining, and it was just boom, 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 doing things. So that day he was like kissing my hands and saying, "At last you came, I love you." And he says things like, "I've been," he's obviously like he's been in love with me for ages, and we have this spiritual connection and telepathic connection, and he's sending me messages, and and now I'm ready, and I came to him, and he's glad, and it was kind of like this. At that time, I was certain that he was waiting for me to die. But I couldn't put it into words, even to myself. I couldn't tell it to myself. But he told me, and he told me things.
He was waiting for you to die?
No, for him to die. He was waiting for me, for this meeting.
Okay.
He was holding on to life because he had to meet me. So there was this
transitional exchange, energetic.
Maybe energetic, but it wasn't even energetic exchange. It was kind of like he needed me to set his soul free. So it was kind of like this wisdom in me. This wisdom in me that even though I was true to myself and knew, I couldn't even accept it myself at the time being, that he did every spiritual practice, but there was this one thing which would set his soul free, and it was meeting me, looking me in the eye, and just being in the same space with me. He knew it. Like he knew he had, it's like I was the last kind of like stone to set his soul free kind of thing. And I couldn't accept it myself at the time. And even now,
it's a pretty wild thing to accept.
I mean, wild thing, yeah.
It's not like, it's not something you would hear in a movie, or
and
but
it's
to experience, but to actually truly have this experience and to know that this is a reality, and to then, because the mind wants to understand how. Right?
Yeah, then the thing is, the thing is, for me, it's not about the mind. In my experience, it's not about not understanding how. I understand, like I have the, it's like I know exactly what's going on. I'm certain, because I don't live in the material world like other people do. I live in another reality. I live in a spiritual reality, and now I'm able to state that. But at that time, I wasn't able to speak about it because so many people are disconnected from that energy. So many people are making things mean things and are in a distorted perception and not connected with the light. They don't understand, and they would freak out. I don't freak out. I'm certain of what's going on, but they would freak out. So I think that's also the biggest reason why I couldn't own it in the world. I knew it, but I couldn't speak about it. I couldn't own it because I was not in fear, but I also was able to see with that wisdom and connection I had, and all that connection with the other, with all of the high level consciousness and the soul levels. If I spoke about this when the time wasn't right, I would get myself killed like the others. So I even had that wisdom.
That's a very good insight.
So I had to wait.
You've got to be ready, because it's
for the world to be ready.
The world to be ready, and to be able to hold it.
Yes. So it wasn't about even me not understanding, but I couldn't accept it and own it to be able to reflect it to the world. And what happened is I go back, and then I think a week later or 8 days later, Filiz, my friend, calls me, and she says, "You saw him, right?" And I say, "Yeah." I didn't tell her, by the way. She's also very spiritual. She knew, because they had a spiritual, probably, connection as well. Because she used to go and visit him, and they were friends, and whatever he shared with her, I don't know. And she says, he recently died. He either died that day or a day before, or and it was like a week or 10 days after we met, and everything got even clearer. Like I didn't know what I did, but I'm certain that I was able to set him free, his soul free, and a deep, deep healing happened.
For many of the great teachers, there has always been some of the greatest masters of different faiths will have one student, and their whole life is about making that connection, that bridge of the soul with the one student before the many, that this was always a lineage of wisdom to pass it through, to pass something, to pass a teaching. But it's a connection, it's a bridge of souls, of energy that's going back through generations. What information is being passed through from the soul, what contract is being resolved in the upper worlds, right? What is it's very hard to put that into words, but it's a knowing of this meeting needed to happen, this exchange, and this awakening, this acknowledgement, this activation for myself, so then I can now begin to do the work that I'm here to do, passing that stick, because it's holding an energetic balance.
Yeah, and now I feel very lucky, even because I have you in my life as a male, deeply connected with spirituality, because it's kind of like this message of now it's safe to even get more of it out there, because like we did a podcast a couple of days ago with Antonia, and about the Awaken, the goddess, and the connection women have, females have, with the womb. You know, in the Islamic tradition, the womb is Rahim and Rahman, which is the womb's name, where a child gets alive, where the creator is at a woman's body, that is Rahim, and Rahman is one of God's names. So it's like there are some prayers in the name of Rahim and Rahman, and it is the woman's womb is kind of like the house of God.
It's the kingdom.
Yes, it's the kind of like the house of God. So
life is, but
so,
it's whole. It creates life.
Yeah. So because we have that connection, because we literally experience that, like the creative force and one with creativity and spirituality, and because women have like 70% feminine energy and more spiritual connection, more meaning, not better or worse, but intense. So it's like we are less connected with the material world and the five senses. That's why we are lunatics when compared to man, because we are lunar and we're like outside of this world. It's like it is when, like the song, it's a man's world. This is a man's world. Like you're more connected with the material world and the systems and structures, and you know the way in the world better than us.
In the world, which is interesting because there's the different ways of relating. There's the feminine from a spiritual perspective, and the masculine spiritually, and the feminine materially and the masculine materially, because the feminine is more connected to physicality, because they're earth, they receive, so you're receiving, so that's the vessel, but spiritually
we're channeling
and also receiving.
Yes, receiving, channeling, and it's like, I think I think the mistake, and that was what we spoke with Antonia as well, and women would probably connect with that, you probably would. We made, a couple of 100 years ago, women made the mistake of speaking about their deepest connection, their level of spirituality, to men that did not have the spiritual connection yet. And they were burned and they were killed, because when you talk about these stuff, like the story I told you, this is truth. You know, this is like truth. It happened, really. And when I talk about this story to a man that doesn't have that spiritual connection, you know, not a woman, because women usually do understand spiritual stuff, they would probably name me mad and nuts and cuckoo, and, you know, and that has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years on earth, because man did not have much spiritual connection, and women were not wise enough to only speak about some stuff. Like there is a level of intensity you can only speak in a woman's circle. Women weren't wise enough to keep it there and speak it to man. And the mistake was, man's ego is much more powerful, and they are using that ego to achieve, to focus and to concentrate and to penetrate as well the world, the woman, everything. It's like to manifest. And woman's spirituality might feel like a threat to man if they are not fully, you know, balanced. And, you know, it's like, because that spiritual power is huge. It's like that light, and you probably have been experiencing it with, you know, your partner, Rachel, and because she's also very connected spiritually, you know, although she's younger than me, I see her growth as well, and where she'll end up in a couple of years. It's like she has that spiritual feminine sacred connection as she's flowing with that. And you probably experienced what that light can do, how it can shake. So it's like when the male is, and my husband did as well, like, you know, like we spoke about it, he fainted a couple of times, and that light is just
that's allowing the masculine to fully break open from his conditioning, because it's about, again, it's really
ego, kill the ego.
It's breaking the ego, because there's the power of the masculine ego, the force of the masculine, but when it doesn't have its connection to source and to spirit, it's connected to the self, it has a distorted sense of foundation. It's rooted in the I. Therefore, what?
Yeah, the ego goes in the way, in the man,
which creates the conflict. It thinks that because we believe there's opposition or something to break, something to penetrate, a force to go against. It's like there's nothing to go against because everything is one. So it's kind of like it just takes.
Yeah, I'll make a joke now. Yeah,
please.
You know the saying, once a wise man said nothing, and afterwards the saying should go because he decided to listen to his wife or the woman. So the thing is, men who are using their spiritual connection and are spiritually connected are connected because that spirit is Rahim and Rahman. That's the feminine energy. So spirit is the feminine energy. It is the spiritual world. That's the energy I have, my truth, my connection. The Rahim and Rahman, that creative energy, is spirit itself. So when men go on spiritual journeys and learn to listen to spirit, they get wise and see the woman's connection and start listening to her and allow her to lead the way. So like my husband, because he's much more older than me, he's such a wise man, and he's been on earth for a long time. Of course he's wise. He is at a point in his life where he's also deeply spiritual, although he doesn't talk about it, like you see it in him. He has this spiritual connection and he's led from his spirituality as well. Because of his connection with spirit, he sees the deeper level of connection in me, and he willingly chooses me to lead his way because he knows the level of my connection is much more deeper and higher than him. And if he follows me, he can't go wrong.
But he also creates.
But like young boys,
the mask is also a container, like the expanse, a container for this to unfold. So there is a dance.
Yes.
So the masculine plays a role in.
Yes, I was going to say that. So I was going to say that. So his allowance
is the space that
helps me expand,
and then he follows that
the goddess as well.
For sure, but
so
his work is just expansion.
Yes,
Shiva,
exactly.
Expansion,
exactly.
And then the feminine. Yeah. So again, with languages.
So his thing is allowing, because he's allowing his connection. It depends on, in man, in the male journey, it depends on how much you allow spirit to lead you.
Because he's also being guided. Like
and
he's
that level,
is like,
that level,
expansion.
So that level allows the wisdom of the woman, and through that, he just lets the feminine, the spirit, lead the way, because with that he is wise enough to know that, you know, things just don't go wrong. But if you go with the ego's path, things might go wrong. So it's like I see that's amazing. And then, you know, I have, you know, co-founders, I have other people in the business world I work with. It's like you see when they don't have that connection, they don't see the value of the guidance of the feminine. And they just go this way or that way. But it's obvious. I tell you, you know, I just show you the way. If you are just to listen, you know, and focus your energy where I'm leading you, because I don't have your energy.
But for a man
you
to
know?
fully listen, he also has to be connected.
Yes, he has to be wise. That's why I say boys can't do that. You have to be a man. You're like, it's the male energy.